reality.
He got infected with COVID-19, unfortunately, and I see it as preventable.
COVID's second wave has once again ravaged Ontario's long-term care homes.
It's absolutely ridiculous that it's taking that long to give the first dose.
You're saying the government is complicit in those deaths?
Absolutely.
It is revolutionary technology.
This is the first time that an mRNA vaccine is going to be deployed at a global level.
Its strength is its ability to harness the power of the body's own immune system.
The first question is, are you okay? And then the second question is, should I get this vaccine? And I always answer with yes.
Hello, I'm Dawna Friesen. Welcome to the new reality. We're in the race of a lifetime, getting a COVID-19 vaccine into arms while fighting back a second wave which threatens to overwhelm our hospitals and long-term care homes. It's a test of logistics, planning, and execution. While provinces like Alberta and PEI have already vaccinated the most vulnerable, those in long-term care homes, Ontario has come under fire for unnecessary delays, queue jumpers, and thousands of doses still sitting in freezers. Carolyn Jarvis delves into what happened and why, and asks, are we ready for the millions of doses that start arriving in the spring?
There are two times in COVID's second wave when Kristen Hunter has cried. The first, when she learned with relief the vaccine had arrived in Ontario. The second, when she heard it didn't reach her father in time.
He got infected with COVID-19, unfortunately, on January the 8th. And I see it as preventable, given that that vaccine was possible to be in his arm before he got infected.
Ontario has had enough doses in hand to provide the first shot to all long-term care home residents, those dying in the greatest numbers since the end of December. But it doesn't expect to reach all of them until mid-February.
If we had the will to get these into long-term care, we would make it happen.
Kristen's dad, John, is 65. For now, he's escaped COVID's grasp with a slight fever and cough. But with heart disease, diabetes, and dementia, he's high risk, and things could change at any moment.
I hope it doesn't mean that he becomes so sick that he dies, but that's a possibility given his health issues.
I really think that we're deliberately actually killing people with this political inaction and a lack of will.
Dr. Samir Sinha is the Director of Geriatrics at Mount Sinai and University Health Network Hospitals in Toronto.
We only have 626 homes. We have 72,000 people. We know where they are, and we've had enough vaccine to vaccinate all of them from December 21st. But since that date, we've had over 400 people die in these homes, including 2 staff members.
You're saying the government is complicit in those deaths?
Absolutely. This is what we're calling a genocide.
COVID's second wave has once again ravaged Ontario's long-term care homes. The province has said long-term care residents and workers would be prioritized for vaccines, alongside essential caregivers, healthcare workers, and First Nation communities. But while provinces like Alberta and PEI completed first doses for all long-term care residents by mid to late January, Ontario still had thousands to go.
Let's turn the narrative around and say we have 626 orphanages in Ontario, and there's a horrible virus that's attacking children, especially in these orphanages. There's 72,000 of them. We have all their addresses. We know where they are, and we have enough vaccine. We'd move heaven and earth. That's the Premier's own words. We'll do everything possible to protect these people. We will put an iron ring around.
Ontario's COVID-19 vaccine campaign has been about critical decisions and equally critical pivots. One of the first was its decision to put its vaccination hubs in 19 hospitals across the province. The Pfizer-BioNTech vaccine needed ultra-cold freezers, and initially the guidance was that it shouldn't be moved. Dr. Isaac Bogosh is an infectious disease specialist and member of Ontario's Vaccine Task Force.
There was credible concern about moving the vaccine, that if you move it around and actually if you defrosted it and agitated and shook it up, it would denature it.
For the first 2 weeks, long-term care workers came in for shots, but most residents couldn't access it. Quebec, by contrast, chose a different route. Instead of entirely using hospitals, it put half its vaccination sites right inside long-term care homes. And by mid-January, with fewer doses supplied, it had provided first shots to thousands more long-term care residents than Ontario.
So, yeah, there's clear bumps on the road. There were clear hurdles and some missteps.
A game changer came December 18th, when Pfizer broadened its transportation guidelines, allowing the vaccine to be moved. British Columbia adjusted course within days, shipping it into long-term care homes. But it would take Ontario until January 5th to do the same.
All Canadians, including me, are frustrated to see vaccines in freezers and not in people's arms.
Ontario's freezers were filling up with doses. What's more, it took a break from vaccinations for Christmas and Boxing Day.
In hindsight, it was the wrong decision.
In response, Ontario made its first pivot. It said it would stop reserving second doses and would prioritize speed over perfection.
So, things are really happening. Could they happen faster? Absolutely. But there is some significant progress, and quite frankly, that is going to save lives.
By this point, there was also a second vaccine in play, Moderna's, which had fewer constraints. But this new strategy of speed came with a cost. In the rush to vaccinate, some hospitals allowed non-patient-facing employees to get the shot. This email from Osler Health invites any back-office administrative staff or volunteer. Another from the University Health Network said all researchers are eligible. Frontline doctors and nurses across the province who were hearing of this while waiting for their vaccine became incensed.
Speed over precision is not what we were hoping to see, and it's certainly not fair.
Dr. Diana Ahmed works at the Brantford General Hospital, as well as in long-term care.
But there's got to be an order and a fairness to how this vaccine is rolled out, and there's got to be accountability for the complete circus of rollout that occurred at Osler and University Health Network.
Kevin Smith is the president and CEO of the University Health Network.
This was a one-time event where there was some additional vaccine left over at one of our peer hospitals.
Smith says the decision was made only after frontline workers were offered the vaccine, and there was a risk 250 doses might go to waste.
I'm in no way suggesting that that's the right approach going forward. Going forward, we absolutely need to do this on a risk-stratified basis.
A spokesperson for Osler Health said they are following the provincial guidelines, but that in addition to patient-facing staff, vaccines are also being administered to hospital staff, physicians, and volunteers who spend time within our hospitals when doses are available.
We've got our vaccination priorities wrong. And I think the issue is we simply left it up to the hospitals in order to get the vaccines out.
Biostatistician Ryan Imgrund advises public health units in Ontario.
Phase 1 is the phase where you need to be vaccinating the most vulnerable people in Ontario, those that will succumb to COVID-19, those that will be hospitalized with COVID-19, those that will put a stress on our healthcare system.
Ontario did exceed its target of vaccinating all long-term care residents in hotspot areas earlier than its January 21st target. The rest of the province is supposed to be done by February 15th.
You're shaking your head.
It's absolutely ridiculous that it's taking that long to give the first dose to all long-term care facility residents here in Ontario.
While Pfizer and Moderna underscore the need for 2 doses for its vaccines to be effective, clinical trials showed an immune response 12 and 15 days respectively after the first dose.
So that's why it's so important that we get out that first dosage into people right away.
1 month after the first shipment of vaccine arrived in Canada, the head of Ontario's vaccine task force, retired General Rick Hillier, announced a second crucial pivot. Long-term care home residents would be the near sole focus for vaccination.
The only needles in the next 4 weeks, almost exclusively, will go into the arms of those residents and essential caregivers in long-term care homes across Ontario, and for second needles, because that's all the vaccines we have.
All the vaccine Ontario has, because Pfizer announced that same day shipments to Canada would be reduced for the next 4 weeks. It was a major blow, just as Ontario was ramping up vaccinations.
We would have loved to have had those vaccines going out to the long-term care homes earlier, faster, quicker. If we don't have them, we can't do that. So we're not wasting any of the time. We just don't have the vaccines to get to it earlier.
The next chapter in the vaccine campaign will happen this spring, when substantial shipments start arriving.
We want to do more mass vaccination sites around the province, 50 or 60 or more of them, and ramp that up. We are going to include the family physicians and the pharmacy chains, and their capacity is enormous.
There are family members, though, of loved ones in long-term care homes who feel like we have failed them, that they have gotten sick while waiting for a vaccine that was in the province. Did we fail our seniors?
I don't believe that we failed our seniors. I can also say, my goodness, my heart goes out to them. All I can say is we're bringing those vaccines to those long-term care homes, and we're doing that right across the province of Ontario.
But for Kristen Hunter, it's no longer just about her father getting the vaccine. It's about surviving the virus.
If he could speak for himself today, what would he say?
He would probably say that this isn't right, that this is unfair, and this was preventable.
Coming up on The New Reality.
Is this something that's being pushed through? Is this something that they're taking shortcuts on?
A vaccine like this had never been approved for human use.
We've really just repurposed an existing, well-understood technology, but it's not that this technology is only a year old.
The world is banking on vaccines to get us back to life the way it was before COVID-19. And 2 of the vaccines approved in Canada rely on groundbreaking genetic technology, which for years held huge promise but always ran into biological roadblocks. It's called synthetic mRNA, or messenger RNA. Until 2020, no mRNA vaccine had ever been approved, but the pandemic drove scientists to focus their efforts. And now, a once dismissed idea is driving us toward what we hope will be a COVID-free future. No one is potentially more exposed to COVID-19 than those who work with the sickest of patients. Zara Kahia is only halfway through her shift and has already changed her PPE 16 times. The 30-year-old is a respiratory therapist in the chronic ventilator unit at Capital Care Norwood in Edmonton. COVID-19 protocols mean fresh, head-to-toe protective gear is mandatory every time she moves from one patient to another.
They have compromised respiratory systems, and they require 24-hour respiratory support. And because of this, we have to be so much more cautious when we're dealing with patients like this, who are already at higher risk than people in the general population.
When the first vaccines were approved in Canada, she got the shot. But, like many people, she had questions.
Is this something that's being pushed through? Is this something that they're taking shortcuts on? But of course, I'm a numbers girl, so I tended to kind of read the studies and read how efficient it was and read the thousands upon people that they tested on phase 1 and then in phase 2. And also the fact that the FDA didn't change how they did their approval process. They may have sped it up, but they continue to make sure that through every single stage, these vaccines met the appropriate guidelines.
It was done with astonishing speed. In January 2020, when Chinese scientists identified the coronavirus, they sequenced the genome and published the data. Thousands of miles away, scientists were waiting and immediately began work on potential COVID-19 vaccines. A vaccine like this, using mRNA or messenger RNA, had never been approved for human use. But scientists had done decades of research into the technique, convinced one day an mRNA vaccine would work. And this was a pivotal moment.
We've really just repurposed an existing, well-understood technology for a new indication. This is the first time that an mRNA vaccine is going to be deployed sort of at a global level, but it's not that this technology is only a year old.
Matthew Miller is an associate professor in the Department of Biochemistry and Biomedical Sciences at McMaster University in Hamilton, Ontario.
Though the mRNA vaccines that are showing over 90% effectiveness, that's really a tremendously successful vaccine by sort of all historical standards.
It is revolutionary technology, and its strength is its ability to harness the power of the body's own immune system. But scientists had to overcome some big hurdles. The coronavirus's spike protein, which forms its crown, is what makes it so infectious. That spike allows it to attach to cells in the body and infect them. mRNA vaccines work by using that weapon against the virus itself. Like a computer code, synthetic mRNA tells the cells of the body how to make the spike protein. Scientists had to find a way to inject it without having the immune system immediately attack it. They came up with a lipid nanoparticle, a kind of invisibility cloak, a fatty bubble that encapsulates the mRNA and keeps it from being destroyed, allowing it to slip into the cell. Once inside, the mRNA is released, and the cell starts building the spike protein, mimicking a COVID-19 infection. It is completely harmless, but it triggers the immune system into creating antibodies against the coronavirus. If the person gets infected, those antibodies prevent the virus from entering the cell by attaching themselves to the spike proteins. That's what creates immunity.
Adding this additional SARS-CoV-2 spike protein mRNA in our cells is like adding a drop of water into the ocean. The cells don't see this as anything different from what they're already bursting with anyway.
And contrary to a myth circulating on social media, the vaccines cannot and do not alter your genetic makeup, your DNA.
It's not something that's capable of changing the DNA in our cells. DNA makes mRNA, but mRNA does not make or manipulate DNA.
There is a Canadian connection to the creation of the vaccine. In this Vancouver lab, Tom Madden and his team at Acuitas Therapeutics helped create one of the key ingredients in the Pfizer-BioNTech vaccine, those lipid nanoparticles.
Early 2020, we sort of realized the potential threat from COVID-19, and so we discussed with BioNTech that a vaccine against COVID-19 is really something we should be working on as quickly as possible.
Both companies could work off existing technology to get the COVID-19 vaccines out faster.
That's the beauty of this, is everything could stay the same, and you simply have a tweaked messenger RNA that exactly encodes the new variants. Nothing else changes.
Even before COVID, mRNA technology was being tested on other infectious diseases, such as Ebola, Zika virus, and influenza. Cancer cells also make proteins that can be targeted by mRNA vaccines. The world could be on the cusp of a new era in vaccinology.
I'm very hopeful that this is just the first example of a messenger RNA vaccine that will have global impact, and there will be others that are also making a big contribution to medicine in the future.
I think we're going to see a massive explosion in mRNA vaccines that are widely available over the course of the next 5 to 10 years.
The vaccines went through rigorous human clinical trials in tens of thousands of people before they were approved. Some did experience mild, short-lived side effects like pain at the site of injection, body chills, feeling tired or feverish. That is not uncommon with many vaccines.
Yes, it has side effects, but I didn't feel anything. My kids, my daughter was calling me, "Mommy, are you okay?" I said, "Yes, I'm fine."
Good morning, Beatrice.
Ursula Winston is a personal support worker at a long-term care home in Toronto where there was an outbreak.
It's a relief for me. I mean, I needed to do this. I wanted to do this.
Getting the vaccine, she believes, will keep both her and the residents safer.
I made the decision because the residents needs me. They need us as a team. They don't have enough staff, then who's going to be there? So I made the choice.
Today, she's getting her last dose. Adverse reactions typically come after the second shot. There have been some cases of adverse reactions in people with a history of serious allergies. Health Canada advises anyone with serious allergies or health conditions to seek medical advice.
You know, if you look at the rates of long-term adverse events associated with the vaccine and compare that against those same adverse events associated with infection, what you usually see is that the vaccine lowers your risk relative to getting infected.
Pregnant women and those who are breastfeeding did not take part in human clinical trials, so there's no data on potential risks to them. Overall, though, the evidence shows the benefits of the approved vaccines outweigh any risks.
Nothing is without risk, but the serious adverse effects that occur as a result of vaccination occur at extraordinarily low rates.
The first question is, are you okay? And then the second question is, should I get this vaccine? And I always answer with yes.
Sarah Kahia was the first person in Alberta to get the vaccine, and she knows vaccine hesitancy is real.
To be able to be the voice and to be able to speak to people in my community and to speak to other people who have seen me getting this vaccine. And I'm able to answer these questions and I'm able to show them that I'm fine and that this vaccine is fine.
She believes many people who are hesitant, including some people in Black, Indigenous, and racialized communities, isn't because they're anti-vaxxers, but because there's distrust of government and the healthcare system after years of racism and abuse.
This same government is kind of coming up to these communities now and saying, trust us, take this vaccine, just believe what we're saying right now. They have the right to ask those questions, and it's our responsibility, it's public health responsibility, it's the government's responsibility to make sure that these questions are continually answered and reiterated again and again.
Next week on The New Reality.
I've never had trouble paying the rent before this year, and I lost my job. You can't get blood from a stone.
Housing and health are inextricably linked. You can't disconnect the two things.
I observed tenants being evicted in as little as 60, 90 seconds.
I'm dealing with a corporation that doesn't see me as a person, doesn't see this as a community. They see it as a source of profit.
That's The New Reality for this week. I'm Dawna Friesen. Thanks for joining us.